I wasn't quite sure whether I could cross over from being a personality, in quotes, to being an actor.
There are faces that define an era. The mustache, the grin, that effortless swagger. For a decade, he was everywhere. The #1 box office star in the world. 5 years in a row. Then, almost overnight, he was gone. This is the story of an actor that dominated cinema, then vanished. Burt Reynolds, the football player who became an actor. Burton Leon Reynolds Jr. was born on February 11, 1936 in Lansing, Michigan. His father served in the military, and after World War II, the family moved to Riviera Beach, Florida, where his father became the town's chief of police. For young Burt, life revolved around one thing: football. He was good at it too. Reynolds played halfback at Palm Beach High School and earned himself a football scholarship to Florida State University. He had his eye on the pros. The Baltimore Colts were watching him. Everything was falling into place for a career in the NFL. Then came 1955, a car accident, a knee injury that wouldn't heal. Just like that, his football dreams were over. Reynolds was devastated. He didn't know what to do with himself. During his recovery, he took classes at Palm Beach Junior College, and there, almost by accident, he discovered acting. A college play called Outward Bound changed everything. Reynolds won a Best Actor award for his performance, which led to a scholarship at the Hyde Park Playhouse in New York. While performing in a production of Mr. Roberts in 1957, he was spotted by a talent agent and signed to a television contract. The football player from Florida was now an actor in New York City. The television years. Reynolds spent most of the 1960s on television. He appeared in westerns like Riverboat from 1959 to 1960, playing the boat's pilot alongside Darren McGavin. But his big break came in 1962 when he joined the cast of Gunsmoke, one of the most popular shows on television. For 3 years, from 1962 to 1965, Reynolds played Quint Asper, a blacksmith with a mysterious past. Female audiences loved him. Here was this handsome, rugged guy with an easy charm. He became a familiar face in living rooms across America. After Gunsmoke, he starred in another series called Hawk in 1966, playing a Native American detective, and then Dan August from 1970 to 1971, a police drama. During this time, Reynolds also appeared in a handful of movies: Angel Baby in 1961, Operation CIA in 1965, Navajo Joe in 1966, and 100 Rifles in 1969. But none of them made much of an impact. He was a TV actor trying to break into movies, and it wasn't working. Everything changed in the early 1970s. Reynolds started appearing on talk shows: The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, The Merv Griffin Show, Dinah Shore's Show. He was funny, charming, self-deprecating. He could tell a story. People who had only seen him as a tough guy on Gunsmoke realized there was more to him. He had personality. His relationship with singer Dinah Shore, who was 20 years older than him, became tabloid fodder. They met when Reynolds burst out of a closet on her talk show as a surprise guest. The romance scandalized some people and fascinated others. Reynolds didn't care. He was becoming famous for being Burt Reynolds, the centerfold that changed everything. In early 1972, Reynolds made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He was a guest on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and Cosmopolitan magazine editor Helen Gurley Brown was also on the show. During a commercial break, she asked him to pose for the magazine's first ever male centerfold. Reynolds thought it would be funny, a kick. He later said he had a strange sense of humor and agreed partly because he knew his film Deliverance was about to be released, so he did it. In the April 1972 issue of Cosmopolitan, there was Burt Reynolds lying on a bearskin rug, completely nude except for one strategically placed arm. The issue sold over 1 million copies. It became a cultural phenomenon, but it also became one of Reynolds' biggest regrets. The centerfold appeared on t-shirts, on panties, everywhere. He started receiving obscene fan mail. Standing ovations at his theater appearances turned into hoots and catcalls. Women cared more about seeing him naked than watching him act. He later wrote that he thought people would be able to separate the fun-loving side of him from the serious actor. He was wrong. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just 3 months after the Cosmopolitan issue hit newsstands, Deliverance premiered.
This is your birthday. If you had to buy yourself something for your birthday today, what would you buy?
Peace on earth, goodwill toward man, and no more VD in the country.
Deliverance and stardom. Deliverance was directed by John Borman, and based on James Dickey's novel about 4 city men who go on a canoeing trip in the Georgia wilderness and encounter violence and terror. The studio wanted a big star. They approached Jack Nicholson, who wanted $500,000. They went to Marlon Brando, who wanted the same. So they told Boorman to make it with nobodies for no money. Boorman cast Reynolds for $50,000 and Jon Voight as his co-stars. Reynolds played Lewis Medlock, the alpha male of the group, the outdoorsman who thinks he can conquer nature. It was a physically demanding role. Reynolds and the other actors did their own stunts. Reynolds cracked his tailbone. Ned Beatty almost drowned. The film featured one of the most disturbing scenes ever put on screen, and Reynolds himself later said the rape scene went too far. But Deliverance was absolutely brilliant. It made $46 million on a $2 million budget. Critics loved it. The film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and Reynolds gave the best performance of his career up to that point. He wasn't just a TV actor anymore. He was a legitimate movie star. But because of the Cosmopolitan centerfold, Reynolds didn't get the respect he deserved. The Academy didn't nominate him. People made jokes about him at awards shows. He later said he counted half a dozen Burt Reynolds jokes at the Oscars that year. He became a household name, but not necessarily for the reasons he wanted. Reynolds later called Deliverance the best film he was ever in. It should have launched him as a serious, dramatic actor. Instead, it launched him as a sex symbol and a personality. The golden years. Reynolds didn't let the disappointment slow him down. He kept making movies. White Lightning in 1973, where he played a moonshine runner named Gator McCluskey. The character was tough and funny, and audiences responded. The film did well enough that Reynolds would return to play Gator in the 1976 sequel Gator, which he also directed. Then came The Longest Yard in 1974, where he played Paul Crewe, a former NFL quarterback who gets arrested and ends up in prison. The warden challenges him to organize a football game between prison inmates and guards. It was the perfect role for Reynolds. He got to use his football background, his charm, and his ability to play both tough and vulnerable. The movie was a massive hit and earned Reynolds his first Golden Globe nomination. Years later, in 2005, Adam Sandler would remake the film with Reynolds appearing in a supporting role. Then came 1977, the year everything exploded. Reynolds starred in Smokey and the Bandit, a car chase comedy directed by stuntman-turned-director Hal Needham. Reynolds played Bo Bandit Darville, a charming bootlegger who accepts a bet to drive a truckload of beer from Texas to Georgia in 28 hours. Jackie Gleason played the frustrated sheriff chasing him. Sally Field played the runaway bride he picks up along the way. The movie was pure fun. No pretensions, no deep meaning, just a charismatic leading man, fast cars, and laughs, and audiences ate it up. Smokey and the Bandit became the second highest grossing film of 1977 behind only Star Wars. It made over $126 million at the domestic box office. When adjusted for inflation, it ranks as the 67th biggest box office hit of all time. Reynolds and Sally Field began a relationship that would last on and off until 1982. They made 4 films together, and decades later, in his final years, Reynolds would call her the love of his life. After Smokey and the Bandit, Reynolds could do no wrong at the box office. Semi-Tough in 1977, The End in 1978, which he also directed. Hooper in 1978, about an aging stuntman. Starting Over in 1979, a romantic comedy that earned him another Golden Globe nomination. Smokey and the Bandit 2 in 1980. The Cannonball Run in 1981. Sharky's Machine in 1981, which he directed. The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas in 1982, where he starred opposite Dolly Parton. From 1978 to 1982, Burt Reynolds was voted the #1 box office star in the world. 5 consecutive years. He tied Bing Crosby's record for the longest run at the top. During the height of his fame, Reynolds was making up to $10 million a year. That's equivalent to about $48 million today. He was the biggest movie star on the planet. People couldn't get enough of him. He appeared on magazine covers constantly. He was doing commercials for everything. Florida orange juice, cars, you name it. His face was everywhere. The mustache became iconic. His laugh became recognizable. He was more than just an actor. He was a brand. He had a private jet and a helicopter to shuttle between his homes. He owned several mansions in Beverly Hills, a sprawling waterfront estate in Florida called Valhalla, a 160-acre ranch with 150 horses, properties in Georgia, Arkansas, and North Carolina.
I'm a football player who's never been hurt for 8 years. And the reason is because I'm a coward.
When he held the grand opening of his Jupiter Ranch in 1974, 10,000 people showed up. He opened a dinner theater in Jupiter, Florida. He opened a nightclub restaurant in Atlanta called Burt's Place. He co-owned a NASCAR racing team with his friend and frequent director, Hal Needham, running the Skull Bandit car with driver Harry Gant. He became part owner of the Tampa Bay Bandits, a USFL football team named after his Smokey and the Bandit character. He lived like 5 movie stars. Reynolds also knew how to enjoy his success. He surrounded himself with friends. Dom DeLuise became one of his closest companions, appearing in several of his films. The two had an infectious chemistry. Reynolds would throw legendary parties at his homes. He was generous with his money, donating to charities, and helping aspiring actors at his dinner theater. But even at the height of his success, Reynolds was aware of something. He was making the same kind of movie over and over, good old boy comedies, car chase films, action movies where he played a charming rogue. They made money, but they didn't challenge him. In interviews from that era, you can hear him acknowledging it. He later admitted that he wasn't interested in challenging himself as an actor during this time. He was interested in having a good time, and because of that, he missed opportunities to show he could play serious roles. He would look back on this period with mixed feelings: pride at the success, regret at the missed opportunities. The beginning of the end. The mid-1980s were when things started to fall apart. Reynolds was still making movies, but they weren't connecting with audiences anymore. Stroker Ace in 1983, where he played a NASCAR driver, bombed at the box office despite co-starring his future wife Lonnie Anderson. The film felt tired, like Reynolds going through the motions. Cannonball Run 2 in 1984 was another dud, a sequel nobody asked for. Stick in 1985, which he directed, failed both critically and commercially. Paternity in 1981 had failed to generate interest. The formula that had worked so well for Reynolds in the late 1970s was no longer working. City Heat in 1984, where he starred alongside Clint Eastwood, should have been a guaranteed hit. 2 of the biggest action stars of their generation together on screen. Instead, it marked the beginning of Reynolds' decline and became notorious for a different reason entirely. During the filming of City Heat, Reynolds was performing a fight scene when he got hit in the face with a real metal chair instead of a breakaway prop. His jaw was shattered. The injury was catastrophic. He couldn't eat solid food for months. He lost 50 pounds rapidly. His face became gaunt and hollow. He looked genuinely ill, and suddenly, he was unrecognizable as the robust, mustached leading man audiences knew. And then the rumors started. This was the mid-1980s. The height of the AIDS crisis. Reynolds looked ill, and people started whispering that he had AIDS. The rumors were completely false, but they spread everywhere. Reynolds later said that for 2 years, he couldn't get a job. He had to take 5 physical examinations just to prove to studios that he was healthy enough to work. He had to accept whatever roles were offered to him just to prove he was still alive. The combination of bad movies, the injury, the AIDS rumors, and changing tastes in Hollywood pushed Reynolds out of the spotlight. By the late 1980s, he was no longer a bankable star. He made a handful of forgettable films. The roles dried up.
I mean, if a guy committed a terrible crime, they should give him not life imprisonment, 90 years and 50 root canals.
The lifestyle that couldn't last. Reynolds' personal life was also unraveling. In 1988, he married actress Lonnie Anderson, star of the sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati. Reynolds had been with Sally Field for years, and many people believed she was the love of his life. But that relationship had ended. Anderson seemed like a fresh start. When Reynolds married Anderson, he bought her a wedding ring in every gemstone imaginable, so she could never say it didn't match her outfit. They adopted a son, Quentin, that same year. From the outside, it looked like Reynolds had it all. But behind closed doors, the marriage was troubled from the start. The problem was money, or rather, the lack of it. Reynolds had been spending everything he made: the private jet, the helicopter, the mansions, the horses, the restaurant ventures, the dinner theater. Money flowed out as fast as it came in, and he was making some terrible business decisions. Reynolds and his business manager invested in restaurant chains that went belly up. One venture alone reportedly cost him $20 to $30 million. He opened Burt's Place, a themed restaurant that failed. His dinner theater was bleeding money. He owed $121,000 to his toupee maker alone. In the early 1990s, Reynolds made a gamble. He was hired to star in a television sitcom called Evening Shade, about a former NFL player coaching a small-town high school football team. CBS offered him a $3.7 million loan with the understanding that he would pay it back with syndication royalties once the show reached 100 episodes, the threshold needed for syndication deals. The show was popular. Reynolds won an Emmy in 1991 for Outstanding Lead Actor in a comedy series and a Golden Globe in 1992. It ran from 1990 to 1994, but CBS canceled it after 98 episodes, 2 episodes short of syndication. Reynolds never got those royalties. CBS sued him to repay the loan. He didn't have the money. The divorce and the bankruptcy. By 1993, Reynolds' marriage to Lonnie Anderson had completely collapsed. Reynolds filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, but the split became a tabloid spectacle. Anderson accused Reynolds of emotional and physical abuse. Reynolds accused Anderson of being a spendthrift who drained his finances. The media coverage was relentless. The divorce settlement was devastating. Anderson walked away with an estimated $10 million, plus alimony, child support, and the $2 million home they had shared. Reynolds was paying $15,000 a month in spousal support. He was still maintaining his sprawling real estate holdings, still paying for the horses, still trying to keep up the lifestyle he had built during his glory years. In December 1996, Burt Reynolds filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was shocking news. One of the biggest movie stars of the 1970s and 1980s, a man who had once been worth $60 million, was broke. When Reynolds filed the paperwork, he listed $6.65 million in assets against $11.2 million in debts. He owed money to CBS, the IRS, Chase Bank, his agents, his manager, and yes, his toupee maker. Reynolds emerged from bankruptcy 2 years later, but the financial damage was done. He had to sell properties. He lost his beloved Valhalla estate. He sold film memorabilia just to raise cash. The lifestyle was over.
Making pornographic films and all that,
Exactly.
it made you uncomfortable.
It did. It made me very uncomfortable
Yeah.
because I was afraid they might recognize me.
The comeback that almost was. During his darkest period, Reynolds was offered a role in a film called Boogie Nights. The director was a 27-year-old named Paul Thomas Anderson, and the film was about the porn industry in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Reynolds would play Jack Horner, a porn director who sees himself as an artist. Reynolds didn't want to do it. He hated the script. He was uncomfortable with the subject matter. He thought Anderson was arrogant and inexperienced. The two clashed on set constantly. Reynolds later admitted he wanted to hit the director. After filming wrapped, Reynolds trashed the movie publicly, saying it wasn't his kind of film and that every shot was treated like it had never been done before. Then Boogie Nights was released in 1997. Critics loved it. The film currently holds a 94% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Reynolds' performance was hailed as a revelation. Here was the aging movie star playing an aging porn director, both trying to hold on to their dignity in a world that had moved past them. It was art imitating life in the most uncomfortable way. On February 10th, 1998, Reynolds received his first and only Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. He was 61 years old. This was his shot at redemption, the chance to finally get the respect he had been denied after Deliverance. He was the favorite to win, but Reynolds didn't campaign for the Oscar. He didn't do interviews promoting the film. He continued to say he didn't like Boogie Nights or its director. And on Oscar night, he lost to Robin Williams for Good Will Hunting. When Williams' name was announced, the cameras caught Reynolds giving a slow, sarcastic clap. It was the look of a man who had lost everything. Reynolds did win a Golden Globe for Boogie Nights, and the role revived his career enough to keep him working steadily for the rest of his life. But he never got the prestigious roles he turned down during his box office reign. He never became the serious, dramatic actor Deliverance suggested he could be. In the years that followed, Reynolds appeared in supporting roles and television guest appearances. He worked with Adam Sandler in The Longest Yard remake in 2005, playing the role that Michael Conrad had played in the 1974 original. He did voice work. He took whatever came his way. When Quentin Tarantino cast him to play George Spahn in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it seemed like another chance at a comeback. but Reynolds died before filming his scenes. He was replaced by Bruce Dern, The Vanishing. So what happened to Burt Reynolds? How did the #1 movie star in the world for 5 years end up vanishing from cinema? Part of it was bad timing. Reynolds' good old boy persona worked perfectly in the late 1970s and early 1980s, but tastes changed. Audiences wanted different kinds of heroes. The swagger and charm that made Reynolds a star started to feel dated. Part of it was bad decisions. Reynolds himself admitted he wasn't interested in challenging himself during his peak years. He turned down serious roles because he wanted to have fun. He later said he regretted turning down the role in terms of endearment that won Jack Nicholson an Oscar. He was offered roles that could have showcased his dramatic abilities, but he kept choosing car chase movies and comedies. Part of it was bad business. Reynolds spent every dollar he made. The mansions, the private jets, the failed restaurants, the investments that went south. He lived like money would always be there, and when it wasn't, everything collapsed. Part of it was bad luck. The shattered jaw, the AIDS rumors, the marriage that ended in tabloid warfare, the TV show that was canceled 2 episodes too soon. But maybe the biggest reason Burt Reynolds vanished was that he was never quite comfortable being Burt Reynolds, the serious actor. He was comfortable being Burt Reynolds, the personality, the guy on talk shows, the charmer, the sex symbol. And Hollywood has room for that when you're on top, but when you're not, it vanishes quickly. Reynolds gave an interview to GQ in 2015, 3 years before he died. He was asked if he had any regrets. He said he regretted doing the Cosmopolitan centerfold because it hurt his credibility. He regretted not opening himself up to riskier roles. He regretted his relationship with Paul Thomas Anderson, but he didn't seem to regret the fun he had during his peak years, even if it meant he never became the actor he could have been. Epilogue. Burt Reynolds died on September 6, 2018, at the age of 82, from a heart attack at Jupiter Medical Center in Florida. He was cremated, and his ashes were given to his niece. In 2021, he was interred at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where a bronze bust of him was placed. When news of his death broke, tributes poured in from all over Hollywood. Sally Field, his former co-star, and the woman he called the love of his life, attended his private memorial service. So did fellow actors and old friends. Florida State University honored him with helmet decals on their football team's helmets for the rest of the season. They read Ban 1, designed to look like the license plate from the Trans Am in Smokey, and the Bandit, along with Reynolds' signature. At the time of his death, Reynolds had appeared in over 180 films and television shows. He won an Emmy, 2 Golden Globes, and received that 1 Oscar nomination. He had been a cultural icon, a sex symbol, and for 5 glorious years, the biggest star in the world. Burt Reynolds dominated cinema. Then he vanished, not because he stopped working, but because the world moved on. His style of stardom, that combination of masculinity, charm, and self-deprecating humor, belonged to a specific era. When that era ended, so did his reign. But for those who remember, those who grew up watching him race that black Trans Am across the screen or grinning behind that famous mustache, Burt Reynolds will always be exactly what he was, a movie star in the truest sense of the word. Not just an actor, but a presence. Someone who could light up the screen just by being there. That doesn't vanish. It just gets remembered differently. If you enjoyed learning about Burt Reynolds' incredible rise and unexpected fall from Hollywood's highest peak, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. There are so many more stories of Hollywood's forgotten stars waiting to be told. Thanks for watching.